Welcome to Twin Signals, Metrics at Work, with Elizabeth P. Morgan. Because metrics only matter when everyone agrees on what they mean.
In this episode of Metrics at Work, I'm joined by Christian Augustin, Senior Manager, Customer Success, EMEA North and DACH at Camunda. Christian explains why gross revenue retention and net revenue retention reveal far more than customer loyalty. They reflect the health of the entire business. Customer success leaders and sales leaders will learn how these metrics drive better customer outcomes by creating sustainable, long-term growth. Hey everybody, and welcome to Metrics at Work. My guest today is Christian Augustin, Senior Manager of Customer Success for DACH and EMEA North at Camunda. Christian comes with a very special recommendation. After my first episode of Metrics at Work, my first guest, Henrietta Shin, told me, if you interview anyone for this podcast, it has to be Christian. He built and championed customer success metrics from scratch at Capmo when it was a fast-growing startup, and today he's leading a team in a mature organization. So Christian is really in the perfect position to help us understand what really matters in customer success metrics, regardless of company stage. Christian, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Good morning, Elizabeth, and thanks for having me. I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Christian, can you briefly describe Camunda for us, your customers and the organization?
Yes, of course. So Camunda is a process orchestration and automation company, right? So in simple terms, you could say we help organizations, to design, automate, and improve complex end-to-end business processes, right? And this is always about people, systems, devices, and in the meantime, agents. So this is where we are focusing at, and obviously help our organizations to increase efficiency and reduce risks along the line.
So this is agentic orchestration.
Exactly. That's the new famous term for it.
Okay, so business is booming, I guess.
Yes.
Great. And tell us a little bit about your customers. What kinds of customers do you serve?
So in the meantime, we serve more than 700 organizations worldwide, right? So it's across insurance, telco, banking, manufacturing. So it's across different industries of different size. And we have a team of more than 650 employees worldwide as well, with a strong footprint in the DACH region where the company is originally from.
So the companies you serve tend to be larger corporations that are, masterminding smoother and efficient workflows, huh?
Exactly. So it's about very complex business processes, and this is what you find typically in larger organizations, right?
And your team, Christian, in customer success, DACH, for our friends in America, that's Deutschland, Austria, Switzerland, and EMEA North, right? So the Scandies and everything north of where?
Yes, exactly. So it's Germany, Austria, Switzerland. It's what we define as DACH region, right? And then there is also EMEA North, which is consisting of Nordic countries, Benelux countries, and also UK, which is in my responsibility.
No, that's so fun. And the team, your team, its structure and size?
I have a team of 8 employees, and they all manage a book of business. And we are looking after these big companies in that region and trying to help them realize value from Camunda.
So, and the book of business, you say it's like the book of business would be how many customers for that region if we're talking?
So it's absolutely, you can't say that's always the same book of business, right? Because it depends on the ARR size, so annual recurring revenue of the companies. So it could be that you only manage a small number of customers that are across several different use cases and projects. Or you manage much more logos which have smaller ARR. So there is no right answer. or one answer to that question.
And in the team, you have customer success managers, and also you're working adjacent to or with technical account managers. Could you explain the roles there for me?
Yeah, so we have several different customer-facing roles. So that's, I guess, typical for SaaS businesses, right? So we have an account executive who's the commercial owner of our customer portfolio. And then I'm managing the customer success managers. So we are, looking after value realization, so to speak. So that's what we are incentivized on. We want to return or we want to increase the return of investment for our customers. And then we have also very tech-savvy roles because we have a super technical product, right? So we have so-called technical account managers that help during implementation, that are our tech experts, and also enable our customers to exploit the full potential from Camunda.
So the technical account managers are onboarding customers and getting them to the value of their first orchestrated workflows, and then the customer success team is taking over and helping them to realize that value day to day and to expand.
Correct. So they work as a tandem, and so they are both in the meeting, right, with different focus areas. And but you framed it correctly.
Great. And so the metrics you're working with every day, what's on your dashboard every day?
Yeah. So organizations typically differentiate between leading and lagging indicators, right? And lagging indicators, those are the commercial KPIs we are measured on and incentivized on. So this typically gross revenue retention and net revenue retention. So that's at the focus of our employees and our management.
And then you're also seeing ancillary metrics like CSAT, NPS, accounts per CSM. Is there other stuff you're looking at? Product adoption.
Yeah, to value and like these customer satisfaction numbers, I would call them, like NPS and CSAT scores, where we want to get feedback and want to get a recommendation by our customers, right? So this, I would call them leading indicators, because they typically a high score would positively influence our commercial KPIs. And then there are obviously super valuable or relevant ones for our customers, which is time to value. So how long does it take them to realize the first value after getting onboarded, setting up things? So that's also what we are putting in focus.
You had mentioned to me also that you're looking at some nice, you have some nice dashboard widgets about things like, the breadth of the buying center in the account, executive engagement. So looking at some really interesting statistics to make sure that your customer success managers are digging deep and expanding, right? Deepening relationships and expanding.
Yeah. So I would call that one of the main responsibilities of customer success managers, right? So they should make our customers happy by serving them well, but on top, they should also help our customers to find new opportunities, because they're anyways using Camunda already. Why shouldn't they expand that to other projects and departments? So this is one of the core responsibilities. And how do you get there? You need to find new stakeholders with other focus areas in the organization. So this is one of the key pillars that we need to get in compelling events with the customers. So I would call like QBRs, quarterly business reviews, one of them. So this is what we also want to put more in focus.
And it's making sure that the customer success team is looking up, right? Up to the to the executive.
Because you could enter organizational collaboration in different things, right? It could be more operationally from the business owners, or it could come top down from the leadership. And I think you should find your ways around organizations on different levels.
Absolutely. So with all of those metrics on the dashboard, Christian, what other metrics do you personally depend on most?
It's what I mentioned already. It's GRR and NRR, because those basically tell me how successful do we keep the business we are having, and how successful are we expanding based on that footprint in the region already.
So it wouldn't be customer success if we weren't talking about GRR and NRR. So shall we start with GRR? So this is gross revenue retention, right? Could you break down the metric for me? How do you calculate gross revenue retention?
Yeah. So basically at the start of a period, typically like a calendar year, right? So you look at the starting ARR, like the annual recurring revenue you have at the starting point of that period, and you measure against what are you able to retain of that ARR at the end of a specific period. So, and this obviously includes churn ARR or also contractions. So this would negatively impact the GRR, and there is no more than 100%. So that's the maximum you could reach. And typical targets in SaaS companies are more than 92, 93%. That's where it's getting in a healthy way.
So this is really about GRR is really about how well we are keeping the revenue we've already won. So just looking at the revenue we have from the customers we have.
Yeah.
How well are we doing there, right?
That's like a snapshot, basically. You compare the end point of a period of time with the starting point, and for a specific cohort of customers.
Mm-hmm. And why is that the first one? Why is that the we say GRR and NRR? Why does GRR come first for you?
Because it tells me the renewal rate in the end, right? So how the percentage of how much business I could keep with my team, and this tells me a lot about how healthy our business relationships are. So obviously they're also coming sometimes economic factors in there, right? So if companies, for example, go bankrupt, this has also an impact on the GRR in the end. But leaving these factors out of the game, it really tells you how healthy the underlying business is without looking at expansion opportunities, which we come next, I guess.
Yeah. Of course, in this podcast, we talk a lot about meaning and challenges. Where for you are the challenges or the ambiguities in GRR?
Yeah, probably just as I mentioned already, you always have to understand the story behind, right? There could be so many different reasons for churn, and this is what we also look at really on a detailed level. So whenever we forecast that there might be a churn amount, we really want to dig deeper and understand what is the reason behind that. So it's typically a process that starts very early, already a couple of months before, because we want to mitigate that risk, and oftentimes we are successful in that, right? So once we understand the underlying problem, we could in a very customized way address and approach the customer and hopefully mitigate that churn risk. And so it depends on the churn reasons behind.
And I guess there's also this issue about, maybe the first recourse is to think of churn in terms of the number of logos, right? The logo count versus the revenue. Is that, do you see that as an issue that surfaces with your teams when you're looking at GRR?
Yeah.
Like unpacking logo retention versus revenue?
Yeah, I think people often tend to look at logos rather than on ARR, right? So, and coming back to the topic I discussed earlier, right? So they have different portfolios of different size and different ARR. And so obviously a high ARR customer has a much bigger impact on your GRR number in case this customer churns than a rather small project as part of a collaboration. And this is also very interesting if you enter a new quarter and there are notice periods from time to time, right? So you sometimes at the beginning of a quarter already know the forecasted GRR number, and you try to get it better and better, but the picture is quite clear. And this is, I think, an important learning for CSMs to understand that the starting point of a quarter makes it already, or it tells you a story how easy it will be to achieve your retention targets.
Okay, all eyes on the renewal dates. Yeah. So okay, and then you talked about the unpacking the reasons for churn, and of course you mentioned insolvency. I guess there are others. I mean, wouldn't be the first person to suggest that maybe customer success carries some responsibility for product capabilities. Are there other limitations that come to the
Yeah.
front line that you see?
Yeah, so product reasons is a common one, right? And there's also something like a champion leaving the organization, right? And from one day to another, you don't have a close contact into the organization anymore, so you lose that valuable knowledge around the organization. So this is also oftentimes, just single stakeholders leaving the company could bring in a difficult situation. And that's why it's, again, so important that you try to open new doors as part of the CSM collaboration with the customer.
Okay, so this is GRR, the first major metric down. So then the second for you, of course, is NRR, right? Net revenue retention. So can you walk us through that formula, and then let's understand NRR in a little bit more detail.
Yeah. Basically, you could just think about GRR, what I explained earlier, and top put any expansion ARR that you are able to realize, right? So it's again, you compare the starting point of a period with the end point of a period, but on top of the churns and contractions, you would also include now expansions that you realize from existing customer relationships of that same customer cohort. So it tells you quite a good story about, is this customer base not only healthy, but also becoming more valuable over time?
Mm-hmm. And this is NRR is more, we tend to hear more about NRR when we're looking at, business perspectives on SaaS generally. Why is that?
I think because obviously in these times you need to grow, right? So, and NRR tells you more about growth than GRR, which tells you only about how much ARR do you retain. And on top, I would mention here that oftentimes sales teams are as well targeted on net revenue retention, right? So it's about ARR at, and this is why not only CSMs, but also AEs are incentivized on and are looking after.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about incentives, can I ask, how are your incentives at Camunda with these two metrics?
Yeah, I found that very interesting when I started here, because we have actually a mixed target, right? So I'm incentivized both on GRR and NRR, which is different from how I saw it in the past. I saw it also that I'm either measured on GR or on NRR, but now we have a combined goal.
And what does that say to you? How does that influence the behaviors that you take to your team?
I think it's very, very good, because it tells your CSMs it's not only about growing the business, but first you need to take care of your existing customer base. So focus first on renewing the customer, and keep in mind already that as part of a renewal, even you could also work on an expansion opportunity, right? So it incentivizes both things, which are equally important to me.
Great. So what about the metrics you ignore? I mean, everyone I speak to is overwhelmed by all sorts of KPIs. What are the things you ignore or maybe deprioritize?
Yeah, I would say you could measure these days everything, right? So you have access to dashboards and systems where you can get so many different data points, and it overwhelms you, just like you said. And for example, what I could look at is how many touch points my team members have with a specific customer. But I tend to ignore exactly that number, because it gives me not enough meat on the bone, I would say. Yes, there are different customer occasions, different compelling events, right? So a QBR or a renewal discussion or expansion discussion, this is much more relevant to me than asking a customer, how are you doing, right? Which also is important, but this is part of the game, and I would tend to ignore that rather.
And I guess that's also about moving away from the automated moments too, right? Because many of these very simple interaction points, can be generated now. So maybe just making sure that you're focusing on the human moments of engagement.
Yeah, and I think that brings us back to the potentials of AI here, right? Because I see that happening, that the CSMs can focus much more on value unlocking and value realization compared to 1 year ago, because 1 year ago they were so heavily involved in preparing QBR decks, building slides, and documenting after calls, right? And this all has gone away, kind of, or not gone away, but it makes so much easier by exploiting the potentials of AI here.
And I guess also just thinking about my own interactions with community and customers and so on. I mean, there's also, we have so much more knowledge at our disposal, like our own capacity for product knowledge and for guidance is so much richer now. So to an extent, we can be much more autonomous in the conversations we have with people about our products. So it's nice.
Absolutely.
So maybe just shifting gears a little bit, could you share a moment when a metric surprised you? Like when you got an insight from a metric that led you to a different direction or a different way of thinking about customers.
Yeah. I think it's all about AI these days, right? And what I found super relevant and insightful is when we tried in a former company to measure AI fluency, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how AI fluent is a customer and really a specific person in the customer organization, because this tells you in the past you would frame to that like as tech savviness of a person, right? And now we are one step further and we look at AI fluency, and because we are obviously having a very technical product where you could exploit a lot of AI potentials, this tells you how mature a customer is and how mature a person is you're speaking to.
And you're talking about like a former company. I'm guessing this is software in the construction business. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So you were looking at AI fluency in a very physical industry, like where you wouldn't expect much AI fluency. Is that right?
That's correct. And yeah, which where it needed time to convince customers of the potentials, right? So because typically people tend to stick to their own habits because it worked so well over the past decades. And that's also actually a main responsibility of CSMs, right? To foster change management in organizations and to take their fears away and rather turn them into this will make your life easier, and this will make you much more efficient.
So you were exploring AI fluency inside these customer organizations, and what did you uncover?
Yeah, that there is actually not one company that is super AI fluent, right? Because it depends really on the people. And I found it interesting that even in organizations where I expected to not see too many AI fluent people, there are always some of them, right? There are visionaries in the company that are looking into these new potentials because maybe they learned it from their private life. They started to use ChatGPT and Claude and realized the value of it and tried to bring that into their business life. And so you find these people in any organization, but you also find in every super mature organization like these people that are not very AI fluent, I would say.
Yeah. So the insight for you was to, focus more intensely on the individuals, like look for the early adopters within the account, or?
Yeah, I would say at least like like these famous sales concepts like MedPick and so on, at least you need to get a overview of the people you are working with and try to categorize them into. That could be one additional lever in order to define what a person is about. So what is the buying role? What is the job title and so on? But on top, this could be an additional dimension.
So don't generalize on the surface. Always be looking inside the buying center and beyond the buying center to find new buying centers or to expand the buying center. Okay, fun. Now I'm imagining construction site workers that are bringing the agents their kids made for them to work on the during the week. So, Christian, you've worked with different teams in different stages of organizations. How are people reacting to metrics and dashboards? How do the CSMs you lead understand them, engage, tolerate, resist metrics? What has been your experience there?
Yeah, I would say I've made different experiences across different organizations I worked for. And this is maybe also due to the fact they were from different size, right? So I used to work in startup companies where I think there was very limited knowledge in the beginning what GR and NR actually mean, and even other customer satisfaction scores and so on. So it needed a lot of explanation, education to the CSMs. And then I worked for super mature companies where I could learn a lot from the leadership because, I got new insights. And so I don't think there's a lot of resistance against the numbers, but the CSMs obviously want to understand why are we setting these targets and how could they positively achieve them and influence them. So I think you need to make sure that your direct reports understand the why behind and how they could achieve it, because otherwise it might lead to frustration because they feel like they are too ambitious targets or something like that.
Yeah. So when you talk about ambitious targets, I guess you're also talking about it's not just the metric, it's also the KPI or the performance target that's linked to the metric.
Sure. It's in the end, it's a management tool, right? So I think these KPIs are giving you good insights, but you could also use them to foster or to bring a different direction into the business, right? And I saw that in the past happening as well when we, for example, in the beginning measured the CSM team only on gross revenue retention. So we were only looking into decreasing churn numbers. Once we got that fixed, then we turned into a NRR incentivization, and this made it much more. From one day to another, the CSMs were looking to become salesy, and that was a whole different game in the end.
Yeah. And I guess that's also, just from my own experience with startups, in startups, you're often introducing infrastructure, metric infrastructure, when you're exploring and before you set KPIs, right, for performance. So you're setting up structures before the relationship between those KPI structures and employee incentives are established. So maybe that's grounds for ambiguity at the early stage. Would that be your experience?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, definitely.
So Camunda, no problem. Established metric culture, clear KPIs, clear incentives. Clarity.
Yeah, and Camunda obviously is in the business or in the market for quite some years, right? So it's different to a company that just started their business in 2018 or 20.
Yeah. Or even that's even sounding quite a long time ago these days, right?
Yeah.
It's my pleasure to tell you that Twin Signals Metrics at Work is sponsored by HelloTwin.ai, the world's first digital authority. Stop managing agents. Start managing outcomes. Sign up for the private beta program today at HelloTwin.ai. Okay, so maybe then thinking about metrics across functions. So, the CSM is working, of course, closely with sales, of course, with product. have you been in situations where the meaning of the same metric differs between teams, or are there ambiguities that you typically have experienced there when you look beyond from customer success to other functions?
I would say I've made most experience in the collaboration with the sales department, right? And they are also I experienced different targets they were having, right? And I think it makes a lot of sense if they are also incentivized on growing the existing business, which was the case in most of the companies I worked for. But I saw it also happening that there was a strict distinction between sales is only looking for new logos and customer success is only for looking for growing the existing business. And then you are not working in the same direction, I would say. And this brings me once again back to net revenue retention, where I think that's a very good metric, because the AEs are also benefiting from a good NRR number, just like the CSMs. And this means, like, as an account team, you work against the same target.
And I guess it also gives you much more disciplined focus on the ICP in the sales process, right? Because you don't just want to get quick wins. You want to get quick wins you want to get quick wins, but you want to get quick wins that land and expand and grow. So you're looking at your ideal customer profile consistently right along the motion.
Yeah, and I think from a sales perspective now, AEs benefit also from the fact that they learn about the success stories of existing customers, right? Could bring them into their new logo conversation. So it equips them with better food, so to speak.
Yeah, nice. Food for
Not for
food
thought,
for
but
orders. Food for bookings, yeah. And then I guess, so again, NRR is really this, by having this umbrella metric, you can use it to really bridge functions very nicely. And I guess people also argue that it's a product metric too.
Yeah.
To it. Yeah. So
For sure.
there's a lot of product performance in there as well. Christian, are there one or two metrics you wish everyone understood better? Are there areas where you see persistent misunderstanding in organizations?
I think you could differentiate here between commercial targets like the ones we discussed, right?
Mhm.
They need to be understood. I feel like from everyone, because that's in the end what makes the business healthy. But on top, you also have like these soft factors, or like these leading indicators like NPS scores and customer satisfaction scores. And I think they give different teams of an organization so valuable insights. So an NPS score is typically with this one single question: how likely would you recommend further to other organizations, right? So this is one data point. But what I like, for example, about customer satisfaction scores, that you could get very detailed feedback on different functions of your business, right? So you could ask them, how satisfied are you with the support of your CSM, or how satisfied are you with the product functions and features? And then you, from one day to another, you get a lot of feedback on your product roadmap maybe, and this could help your development teams to improve, right? So there's a lot of different data points that are super valuable for you.
So I mean, NPS has had a lot of bad. There's been a lot of bad talk, bad rap about NPS scores lately, and from your perspective, that's because it's very general, and the feedback that it gives you is not specific. So, when you look at these, the misunderstanding with NPS is that it's a coverall that's not maybe so actionable. Whereas, if you can get much more specific about the moment, with something like we said, you can break it down and provide much more meaningful feedback. And I guess that's the easiest way to resolve misunderstanding, is to make sure that the insights you get from a metric are actionable and make sense and are clear.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you just said about the moment, right? I think it is very important to understand, when was the NPS collected? Was that right after an escalation happening, or was it like after a bug fix, or was it like after a QBR? So I think you need to have that contextual information about when the score was collected.
Yeah. Context equals understanding.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so I mean, we're living and working in these amazing times, and you've touched on AI so far quite a bit. But maybe could you just share for us what your experience has been so far with AI and metrics and customer success? So if we can just go through the last year or two of your experience with AI.
Yeah, for sure. So I like to reflect on that on my own as well, because when I think about how I first came in contact with ChatGPT, right? So I used it in the beginning only for private stuff, but then I realized, and then I was happy that the organization I worked for was super embracing to that topic, right? There's also a lot of reluctance in other organizations. So we were asked actually to use it and to make our own experiences. And in the beginning, it was all about note taking or getting maybe a first insight on first information where you used to Google for, and now you use ChatGPT. But this, I would say that was beginning of last year, right? So beginning 2025, and then by fall 25, it already changed substantially. So I used it back then already for preparing QBRs and getting further insights, which automatically pulled in like information on the political, economic, social landscape of that specific customer. So it equipped me with better information. And now, in the meantime, we are in a time where we actually can start building presentations with the help of Claude, or we could, come up with a risk mitigation plan, or with a account mapping and stuff like that. So there's so much potential behind, and this frees up so much capacity and time for the CSM to actually work on the human side of things and to unlock and realize that value I mentioned earlier.
So it's really, I mean, the last since the start of 2025, it has been like qualitative, unstructured, generative work. So summarizing, preparing meetings, and now more sophisticated, systematic client context, right? So you mentioned economic, political, competitive landscape, and then generating the PowerPoint as well. So it's a qualitative, unstructured support infrastructure for you, yeah?
Yeah. And it's in the end freeing up the time for the CSM to meet the customer, maybe go even on site and ask discovery questions to the customer that help you again to improve the relationship and the collaboration, right? Before that, there was so much time, I don't want to say lost, but there was time dedicated to preparing meetings, and after the meeting, you needed to document everything in your CRM and so on and so forth. And that's typically now I see our Slack channels and Teams channels, they are right 1 minute after a meeting happened, there's already like, what are the action items for each and every person?
And how about metrics? Where are you seeing metrics in this scenario?
Metrics in the scenario of AI. So I think they could, you maybe have an easier job to measure them even, or you have more information to feed your systems in order to come up with metrics, and vice versa. You could obviously get inbound information from your systems. So you, for example, if you're in the mode of preparing your next QBR with a customer, you can let AI provide you with a background history of that account, how the metrics evolved over time, and then you can derive some learnings out of that. Maybe here was a score super bad because I remember there was an escalation happening, or something like that.
Okay, so again, linking the metric with the qualitative at a point in time, and then also signals, taking signals from all the incoming information. And then you also mentioned, Christian, the Slack or Teams is a as an interface to get this information? How do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I think for many companies, Slack is the go-to tool. Every morning you log into your computer, right? So you even start what chats did I receive? But there's a new potential when it comes to, for example, I set up an agent and asked the agent to get me a summary what happened last week and feed me with that information Monday morning, right? And you could obviously get in much more detail here and put it in terms of the forecast of your region, right? So what changed week over week in the forecast numbers of all the accounts you are responsible for, and highlight any asks from the team, any observations, why was this change happening? And this takes a lot of time invest away from proactively looking after this information across different systems. So you just get it in your inbox instead.
It's wonderful, isn't it? Do you see a limitation with data quality?
I used to see that. I feel like at Camunda there is really good data quality because it all comes down to how well connected are the systems underlying, right? So once you have the connection accomplished, then you can also double check because it typically provides you also with the source, right? So you could then click on that little arrow behind and look, and it guides you to exactly where the information was taken from. You could even validate. But I find personally that data quality increased a lot over time.
That's terrific news. Christian, it wouldn't be a discussion about AI if we didn't talk about, in the future, if we didn't talk about headcount, I guess. And we've heard a lot of organizations talking about reductions, AI replacement of workforce, mostly in customer support, right? But where do you see the future with AI and customer success with regard to headcount and customers per CSM? Where are you seeing this heading?
Yeah, I believe in the fact that we require the similar headcount, right? Because CSM is such an important role because it's still at the forefront to the customer. So you, as a CSM, you build the bridge to the customer, you're the face to the customer, and internally in your own organization, the CSM is the cross-functional coordinator, right? So the CSM needs to pull in maybe the technical account manager for support, or they need to pull in the account executive when it's about complex commercial discussions, or you need to escalate internally to some product folks that are super deep into a product roadmap. So I believe that role will remain super important. And coming back to my earlier point, it's rather like CSMs will be having a much easier time to deliver on their targets because they have more time to unlock value, to realize that value by going on site with the customer or by having more meetings with several different departments as part of that organization, because they can exploit AI potentials, right? So it's rather taking away the day-to-day routine work and frees up capacity for the meaningful conversation that lives in the moment, so to speak.
Beautiful. So it's like it's giving you the capacity, if we go right back, to unpack, all of the individual and myriad opportunities within an account, to see more, to see the user community, the buying center with more granularity, to maybe unpack customer complexity, and also this notion of providing the bridge, between the customer and the business in a very human way. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then thank you so much. I think oftentimes it's great to unpack the fundamentals of business, and NLR and GRR couldn't be more fundamental. I really appreciate your time. So thank you for joining me, and thank you for being human.
Thanks for having me, Elizabeth. Was a lot of fun to speak about the topics with you. And yeah, let's see how the journey continues.
Thanks for listening to Twin Signals, Metrics at Work. See you next episode.